the browser factory class and config data provider class is created and the codes are written inside it. Now we'll move to the next section, that is to the pages section. So the first thing what we will do in this pages section is we'll create a base test class. So first we'll go to this pages. Basically, I'll go to this pages library. Here I'll create a new class and name this class as base test. Now, what's the use of this base test? Why I creating this base test class? And what this base test class is doing in this frameworks? So you need to understand this thing. See, base test is basically the class that is created to use the utility packages class when required in pages and test. So it's written in base test, create the reference of utility package classes to use when required in pages and test case. Now you see in base class, basically I'll create the object of all the classes, that is the config or the browser factory and many more classes that will come across. I'll create the classes of the object of those, and using those objects, we can easily access that part. So now here in base test, basically you'll see in base test, lots of steps are written, but I will focus on the main part itself. So what I'm trying to do right now is just to check whether the configuration as well as you talk about the browser factory, is everything working fine or not. So right now I'll just write a TestNG test cases. So basically, if you are familiar with TestNG, you know that in TestNG we have different annotations like before class, before suit, and you know the sequence of their execution, that when before suit works, when before test works, you know the sequence of that. So what I'm going to do is those steps like opening the path of driver or opening the websites, those parts I'll put it inside before class. And the closing part, I'll put it in the after class. Now, these two methods, before class and after class, these two methods I'll add to the base test class. Now, when you add these methods here, so basically in before test, now from browser factory, you will get that start application. So that means you need to import this browser factory class here. So I import the package from here. Now, just to get these config.get browser, you remember in config, we have this get browser and get URL. So basically to get details from those two sections, what we have to do, we have to create reference of these classes here in base test. So in this base test, what I'll do, like here you see, I'll create reference of WebDriver, config data provider class, these two classes here, so that I can use these classes in just by creating this object, we can easily use the config data provider class over here. Now I import this config data provider as well. And now once these two are done, now here I import the before class as well. Now just check these steps, what we are doing here. In before class, basically what I do, it's like in before class, just I have done the setup thing. That means I have called the browser factory method and about browser factory class, and the method inside is that is start application. Now start application basically needs three values. If you see the browser factory class, this needs three values. First, the driver, second, the browser name, and third, the URL. So basically here I have done that. First, I pass the driver. Second, config.get browser will give you the browser name. Config.get tagging URL will give you the URL name. Now, the next one is after class. Once the class is done, then at end, I'm just calling the quit browser method. So all these steps are added to base test. Now in base test, we'll keep adding more steps. So right now I'm going step by step, like I have added just these two steps just to check the configuration and browser object is working fine or not. And here I'll do a small thing in test case. Just I'll create a class with name as TestCaseDemo. That's fine. Just create this, and just why I'm creating this, just to run the TestNG thing. So I create a method as test check, and just I add annotation test to this so that the TestNG thing works and we see whether the browser is working fine or not. That's only the job here. That's the reason behind I'm using this test class demo. Later, I'll just create this test case and the steps again in next section. So right now I'm just checking. So I do right click, I go to run as, and I click on test change issue. Now you see when the Chrome driver, it's now something went wrong or it worked fast. Let me check. So it went fast, the test passed, but you are not able to see that section. Now, why that section is not visible? Let's see that. Basically, in test case demo, I put the a few things that we will add here for the timing is like just for checking this thing, just to check this process is working fine or not. So just we will add few things like I'll extend the base test so that these configured data providers basically from base test, at least you can run this before class and after class. Okay. So extend base test, and here just I create object of base test to just for timing. I'm doing this just to show that the configuration thing is configured properly and the website is opening so that we can move to the next section. And one more thing that you can add to your browser to this base test here for the timing is like you create the object, you created an object of this config data provider. So you need to initialize the value to this config data provider. Later, this config data provider, I'll put it inside the setup set, or I say in the suit, before suit annotations, I'll use it there. So better later, I'll break it into different parts. Right now is just to check the configuration part. So first I have sliced value to this config data provider so that I can use this data provider's reference here and get that browser and the URL. And the next thing in base test, just have right now extended here in test data, I've just extended the base test and I'm trying just inside this method, I've just created an object of this base test. Now let me run this thing and see whether I get the website opening or not. Here, now the Chrome driver starts and the Chrome driver is opening. And in this Chrome driver, the website will open, the one that I'm trying to test over here. So that means the configuration of config data providers, browser factories, and bringing it to the base test, all is done here. Now, that's all we have to do in these sections. Just one thing that's from Java is basically I want to just mark here is that in C, in config data provider here in base test, I created object for config data provider, but not for the browser factory class. Because in browser factory, I created the methods with static keyword. That means here, if I'm using static, that means straight away I can call through the class name. But in config data providers, I created methods without static. That means these are non-static method. Remember that. So that's why I need to create object of this config data provider and initialize this config data provider and then call those methods here. And here, because it was a static method, so straight away I called that the start application method as well as quit browser because both are static. So remember the methods that are like static, that means you don't want to do any changes in those methods, then you can define those methods with static. So in that case, you don't need to create object. So that's the small difference that I wanted to put here is the difference between static and non-static. So now the complete configuration is done. So now we will move to the testing section where we will try to basically we'll try to automate a page that is a login page, and just once that page is automated, then I'll try to run a test case. Now, in this section, we are going to cover how to automate the login page. So just to locate the login page element, we'll need a PageFactory class. Now, before doing this, let's understand what is PageFactory. So PageFactory is basically a class provided by Selenium WebDriver to support page object design pattern. Now this page object design pattern that's defined here, page object model. So basically, it's a design pattern or a framework that we use in Selenium, using which one can create an object repository of different web elements across the application. So basically, page object model talks about that for every pages, we'll create our own pages that helps us to move to different web elements, basically in an application. To specify in page object model framework, we create a class file for each web page. And this class file consists of different web elements present on web pages. So basically every page will contain some element. So what we do in this, we create a separate class for each and every page. Moreover, the test case then use these elements to perform different actions. Now, since each page's web elements are in separate class, the code becomes easy to maintain and reduce the code duplicity. Now, it means that if all the elements are separate in its own classes, then in that case, we can easily fetch that particular class and elements from there. So it's like if I want to use any particular element from a class, then straight away I'll call from that class. I don't need to create that element at every place where I want to use it. That's the best thing about page object model. And PageFactory is basically the design that basically supports the page object design pattern. Now in PageFactory, testers use annotation find by. So this annotation is basically used for locating the element. Usually when we locate elements, how we do? We write browser dot basically find elements. Again, we write by dot find by dot the locator name, again the value inside it. Now here we don't need to write that much. Just use the annotation and pass the locator value, and it's done. Now usually to initialize the value to web element, we use the equals to sign and then we initialize value here. Now in this, all the elements are easily initialized to its respective web elements just through the init method. So in this class, you will see how we are using the init method, and what this init method do basically, it initializes the value to its respective web element. That's the job of PageFactory, and it makes stuff very easy if you see. We don't need to go specify for each and every element. Just locate, pass the value to the element, and that will be passed by default. Now this thing we'll do in this class. So what I'm going to do here is I'll create a class in pages and I'll name this class as LoginPage. So I'll name this class as LoginPage class. Now again after that I click finish. Again I get back here. This is the code for LoginPage. Now right now I'll just copy the section for LoginPage. So I'll copy from here till here. That will help you to see how we are locating our element. Just that. Now here you see I'll import this WebDriver, as well as I'll import this PageFactory. Yeah. And I'll import this find by annotation. Now you see how easy it is. Here in constructor itself, I pass this driver. So the driver value is by default passed to this driver. So basically that pass, and in the next step, I'm doing PageFactory.init element. Now when I do PageFactory.init element means that I don't need to specify value to each and every element. By default, these values will specify to its respective element. Now while locating, what I'm doing here, see, this is a new way of locating. Basically in framework, this PageFactory method works and it makes tasks more easy. So just use this annotation, check the locator, pass the value of that particular locator, and then just do this. Just write web element and the name of that particular element. So here in this test case, I'm trying the first test case here. So in this test cases, like I have multiple of test cases, somewhere around 25 test cases here. So out of this, I'm trying the very first one, that is login to website with correct credentials. So here what I do, basically what I'm doing here is just I'm moving to this website, the IT Learn website, the one that I'm trying to automate here, the e-learning website, basically I'm automating here. So the thing what I'm going to do is I'll try to log into this website. And once I'm logged in, then I'll do the next step. So right now, this is my website. So what I'm going to do here is first I'll click on this login button. So once I click on this login button, then I'm into this login page. Here I pass my username as well as password. and I'm logged into the website. So this we are trying to do here. So basically here we are coming across 4 elements. First one, login click, then the username, password, and then the submit button. So that's why I've located the 4 elements here. First one for this login click, second for username, third for the password, and the last one for the button. So you see how simple it's locate a particular page element. So that's what PageFactory bring into use. And just what you have to do, pass this PageFactory in the constructor itself. So create constructor for every class, pass the PageFactory there itself, as well as the driver value. So these 2 steps will help you to initialize the complete page. That's all we have to do in case of this PageFactory, and just this much you have to do to locate a page element. Now we will see how to write test cases in next section. In this section, we are going to write test case for the login page. Now we'll get back to our code, and here you remember already I've created a login test class just to run that test thing, just to check the configuration section. So there I have already run this thing. Now here I'll write the test case. So basically to write the test case, we need to get the login page here. So I will create an object of login page here, and now in this login page, you see in this login page, basically I need to pass a value because the constructor is expecting a driver value here. So while calling this object, I'll pass the driver value here. Now question, from where this driver came? So when you are extending a particular class, basically I have extended the BaseTest class. And in BaseTest, if you see, the driver value is passed here. So this value, I'm taking it from the BaseTest. And because I have extended the login test class with the BaseTest, so I'm allowed to use this value. Now this value, what I get it here in this login test, I pass this value to this login page. Now once the value is passed to this login page, then in that case, it means it allows you to perform a task inside the login page that will help you to automate the elements here, the web elements. So that driver will help you in this case. Now, once this is done, I'll pass the username and the password. So username is this. Password is this. Now this is my username and password, and this username and password I will pass to a method where the steps of click, the username, entering the username values, the password, as well as the submit button works. So that method I'm going to create in this login page. So here I'll create a method with name as void login portal, and this method will take the username value. This will take the password value as well as here. Now, the first thing I'll click on the login button. So here I do, and I click the login button here. Now, next step is enter the username. So this is the element for username. This is the element for username. So in this element, now just to send values, you know that just to send values to that input box, we'll use the send case. And in send case, I'll pass this username. That's passed here. Now next, I'll take the password. So this time, I'll copy the password element and I'll say send keys. And here I'll pass the password value. And once all is done, at last, I'll add the last step will be here as click the login button. Now these steps are written here inside the login portal method. Now this method I'm going to call from the login test. So from here itself, using this object of login page, I'll call the method as login portal and pass the username and password here. Now once the username and password is passed here, this username and password will go to this login portal and will allow you to log in. So you see the steps are so simple. Just go call the method, pass the value, and it's done. So now when I right click here, I run this test case. Then this test case will run here. And let's see whether it's able to log in or not. Now this opens the Chrome driver. This configuration we have already seen the last time. So now we are trying to pass values here. So let's see after website opens, the username and password is passed or not, or the click button is clicked or not. Now after this, once the website is open, now yes, click on login button. Now the username and password is passed and you are logged into the website. That means the test case passed. So you pass the values that pass. Now you see the flow of code. Like I'm writing the test case as place one place. From that test case, I'm calling a method, and there I'm using the element itself. So the element that is in login page, now you see the test case passed. So the element in login page is used over here itself in the method, and the values I pass it from the test case. So this is one of the test cases that I have written here. Now, there is one problem here, that is that I'm passing these values manually. So what I'm going to do next is I'll pass these values to the Excel sheet. So now I'll cover that where I'll put one Excel sheet here. I'll put some values in Excel sheet, and that Excel sheet I'm going to use it here, and we'll see how the values are passed through the Excel sheet. That's the next thing we are going to do, as well as we will use data providers there, and we'll see how that multiple steps are performing here. So now we'll convert this thing, the manual thing, into the way like taking the values from the Excel sheet and then executing the test case.